All right, so here we are. We're a basic setup. I'm in my week 3 class for Intro to CSS. In that folder, CCV Web Development, and I just want to make sure I always have the same file open in both the text editor and the browser. Sometimes I can put a file from my desktop in here and then one from another folder in here. And one of the problems I've been seeing is that folks are editing this file, hitting save, and then hitting refresh and nothing changes. That's a good sign you're not editing the same file you're looking at. So just be sure that you're looking at the same file in both programs. And now that I've got both open, I can sort of use the entire screen just for these two. I'm going to be working in this one file the whole time. So let's zoom in just a little bit here. And in the head section, I'm going to add a style tag. I'm going to start it and close it right away so I don't forget. And it's in here that we're going to start adding styles. Okay, so for instance, the H1 tag, actually the easiest style to change would be the body tag. This is the default tag that runs the whole document. And the nice thing about CSS is if you change a behavior in a tag, it changes it to any tag that's inside of that one. So since the body is really the container for all this stuff, all these tags in here are in the body section. And if we say something like font family Helvetica and save and hit refresh, notice all the fonts just changed. Okay, so if we change that font family equals Georgia, you'll see it changes again. You can use any font that's on your system. Just be advised, there's only certain ones that are guaranteed to be on many systems. So if the font isn't on someone's system, it just comes up as the default. Okay, so in this case, Calibri was not on the system, and default times loaded. So let's just change Arial. Oh, that's not right either. There we go. So just by using styles, the style tag, and the tag names somewhere in the document, we can create this effect. So we can change, in essence, the body. We can change the default font. So what we have here is the selector, and then the style to change. Now, if we want to change more than one style, we just go to the end of the semicolon, and we could say background color. I'm going to change this to a light gray color, and save, hit refresh, and you'll see that my page becomes light gray now. So we can add as many as we want in here. If you have a lot, you can also organize them by indenting as well. White space doesn't matter, just like HTML. So you can have a field day really getting organized in here. Okay, let's mess with some other ones. I know H1, for instance. Let's say the color is going to be red. And so it's cyan, I guess, is that color. So you can see that the H1 just changed. And if I change this to H2, it'll change all the H2s to cyan. And the same with the H3s. And that's really the beauty of having the styles up in the header, is that no matter where they are on the page, if we change it here in one spot, it makes it a lot simpler. Okay, it's a lot easier than going down here and saying H3. I want every H3 to have a style and the color of red. Well, that just changes that one style for that one tag, which is great. Now we have to remember we changed it down here, and it's likely that later on we're going to forget that. And you can see it works. But just to have, I try not to put styles in the code too much. I use this HTML for architecture, like laying out the website, and then I use the styles for the details. So going through here, we can just create a basic document, and add some changes and some visual instructions to help us break our resume out into a more organized way. So what I've got here is I went online and I just found an example of a resume that I kind of liked. And I liked how this is kind of organized. I like the dotted lines in between each section really helps. The all caps really helps a lot too. And some of these colors and format in here. In fact, there's some information I don't have in my resume that I would like to add in as a result of having seen one. So let's go through and just take a look at how we might start that and go about it. So if we have our page here, we have our name, and then we have an address and an email. So let's go ahead and add in an address. So we'll put, in this case, paragraph. So if you don't have an address, you can add one in. And I'll say 245 South Street in some town, Vermont, 05555. And I can be reached at 802 5555. We'll put a line break in there, and we'll say I'm Darren Spafford at ccd.edu. And if I go back and refresh now, you can see that my address is in there just like it was in that example. Okay. Another thing I noticed is under education, there's a year. Right? Where did you go to school and what year? And then what degrees did you get? So in my education, I have where I went to school, but I don't have what year. So I'm going to put an H5 in here and say 1996 to 2000. And just copy this. And I'm also going to put a year for my master's degree. That was 2004 to 2005. And if I hit save and refresh, good. Now my educations have degrees. So another thing I can do in here is I'm not liking the spacing between H1 and H2 in this paragraph. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can remove H1, say margin 0px, and padding 0px. And let's see what happens if I change the margin and the padding to 0. Watch this first title up here. Right? And then if I do the same thing to all of them, so I separated my commas, say do it to H2 and H3 and H4 and H5 and H6 too. Do it to every single one. And you can see my resume compacts quite a bit, which is more of the effect I'm looking for. The next thing I'm going to add in as well, and I'm just going to reorganize myself here and put, I just like to do it this way. I like to put all my H's up here if I'm going to affect them all, and then each one individually. So for instance, H3 has this lovely dotted line that we pointed out. Let's go back over here and see the dotted line below professional summary and employment history, education, and honors. Okay, so we have those. We have education, work experience, highlights, qualifications, and awards and recognition. So if we look at what those are, education's in H3. So H3, we're going to say the border on the bottom is going to be 2 pixels dashed, not solid, and we're going to make that black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All zeros means that the hex color is black. 6 zeros in there. And if you look at the H3s, they now have these dotted lines under them. So I'm going to go through and get rid of the HRs because I don't like those, the horizontal rule that's in between each section that I put. So you can see I'm kind of making adjustments, but I'm really focused on staying in one area or the other. I am not mixing the technologies together. I am either in the body, adjusting structure and organization, or I'm up in the header, in the style, in the head section, adjusting fonts and colors and spacing. I'm very infrequently down here adjusting colors and spacing in all this mess. This is just so simple to leave it as basic as possible. There shouldn't really be any styles unless you absolutely have to. Okay, so this is kind of how this works. Let's take this color here. I'll change this back to black as well. And we'll see kind of where we're at. All right, so below the H3, I would also like to add in some padding on the bottom of 5 pixels. And let's see if we can get that dotted line a little bit away from highlights the qualifications. There it goes. Just give it a little breathing room. Okay, so we can change all sorts of different things in here. Another thing I'm noticing in the design I'm copying is the name is blue, and so are the dates of when the work experience was. So let's do this. Let's create an H1, and I'm going to say the color, the font color, so in this case is just color, is going to be a cyan. We'll say 33FFFF. Let's see how close we are to a blue. Okay, it's not quite what I'm looking for, but I also want to change the H5s as well, because those are the year that we put in there. Remember? And there they go too, just like they showed us in that example. The years are now blue as well. Okay, but let's go find a better blue. So we can go to our W3 Schools website, go to CSS, and there's all sorts of different things you can mess around in over here. Colors is one, so you can go through and find whatever color that you're looking for. And I was able to find it through the CSS reference and then CSS colors down here. And you can see all the different ones. And I like this cornflower blue is nice. So if I just take that hex code right there and copy it, and go back to my code and paste it as the value here, I can now apply that color to my design. There. And that to me is a much better use there. I like that color instead of that light cyan color that sort of disappeared. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I noticed that the teacher instructor, the first sentence is also bumped up against that dotted line. So where it says Castleton State College, I have to figure out this is an H4. Okay, but it's only the first one. The second one, I don't mind the distance between these two. So really what I want to do is take the H3. In addition to creating padding at the bottom, I'm also going to create margin at the bottom. This time I'm going to say 10px. Let's see what that does, and it should push that first line down. Okay, just to give it some more space. And the difference between padding and margin is padding is the space inside of the box. So if the word education is a big box that goes all the way across the screen, and this dotted line is the bottom of the box, and the left and the top and the right are invisible, that's the box. So padding adjusts the space inside the box, and then you have the border, and margin adjusts the space outside the box. So you can look at those on the W3 website as well and try those out. So I'm just going to spend some time going through and messing around, adding in some things. I'm not really in love with how this sits way down far away from that. In fact, I think I'd like to somehow get rid of that space in there. But for now, you can sort of see In many cases, I have an M tag in here. So for emphasis, like I wanted to emphasize the bachelor's in K-12 education. So we can change that as well. We can tell it to EM. We can say the font, the color is going to be, let's try red and see where it shows up and see if that's really what we want it to do. So I've emphasized some words in here. So this is maybe not quite the effect I have, but it's neat to know that I have a style that can grab these. So anytime I want something to stand out, I can just now put this M around it and it'll do that. It'll follow whatever directions I give it. So if I come down here and say I taught a variety of courses or production artist, let's say I want an emphasis on production artist, I can just add the EM, hit save, and then where it says production artist, it's going to change to red and become italic. Okay, I could say maybe I don't want this red. Maybe I want the font weight to be bold instead. Well, now it kind of matches in. Maybe I want the text decoration to be underlined. It's different. So you can go through and kind of mess around with the styles, but the idea is I'd like you to take some styles in this area and apply them to your resume that you did last week for homework and resubmit it. What I'd like to see is instead of that generic resume, which we'll go back to class 2, and I had this resume, which is very simple, and now we've gone to here. So what I'm looking for this week is how much farther can you take your resume? Can you really design it? Can you add some colors and fonts? Can you mess around with the examples in this week's resources and see what it is that you can actually change? And the goal for the assignment this week is, in addition to the HTML we used last week, is to focus on the styles and the CSS to control some of the visual effects. I would like you to see you change the font, at least some colors if you'd like as well, and sort of how things are treated or aligned, and maybe try spacing or padding.